An Omega trader offered a single crystal for a worthless chimera. It made him a legend. Abertura cum CTA. Before we begin this epic tale, I need to ask for your help one final time. We're in the last 15 days of our journey to 100 subscribers, and we're so incredibly close. This milestone unlocks the financial support we desperately need to keep creating these powerful stories that move your hearts. If you've loved our tales of magic, redemption, and unexpected heroes, please subscribe right now. Click that button, share this video with everyone you know who loves fantasy and transformation stories, and leave a comment telling us which story has been your favorite. Your subscription isn't just a number, it's what allows us to continue this journey together. We're racing against time. 15 days, 1,000 subscribers, one final push. Help us cross the finish line. Subscribe now, share widely, comment generously, and let's make this happen together. Now let's dive into today's legendary tale. The Grand Auction House of Mercantia was the most prestigious trading establishment in the Five Kingdoms, where nobles and wealthy merchants gathered to bid on rare magical creatures, enchanted artifacts, and exotic goods from across the known world. On any given auction day, millions of gold coins changed hands, fortunes were made and lost, and the social hierarchy was reinforced through displays of wealth and power. Kai Silverstream had never set foot inside the establishment in all his 28 years, and he never expected to. As an Omega in a society that valued alphas above all else, and as a small-time trader who dealt in common goods like healing herbs, basic potions, and everyday supplies, he existed on the absolute fringes of mercantile society. He owned a tiny shop in the merchant quarter that barely generated enough income to cover rent and food. He had no family. His parents had died when he was young, leaving him to survive on his own. He had no prospects for bonding, what alpha would want an Omega with no wealth, no connections, and no particular talents. But Kai had one thing that set him apart from other struggling merchants, an instinct for value. He could look at something others dismissed and see potential. He could sense when an item was worth more than it appeared. This instinct had kept him alive, and his shop barely afloat for 10 years, though it had never made him wealthy or successful. On this particular autumn morning, Kai was walking past the Grand Auction House on his way to the herb market when he saw the commotion. A crowd had gathered near the service entrance, where auction house workers were unloading crates from a transport wagon. One crate in particular was causing problems. It was shaking violently, and strange sounds were emanating from inside. "Careful with that one!" the wagon master shouted. "The Chimera is unstable. If it breaks free before the auction, it will be your heads." Chimera. Kai stopped walking, his curiosity piqued. Chimeras were incredibly rare magical creatures, combinations of multiple animals bound together by ancient magic. They were powerful, dangerous, and extraordinarily valuable. What was one doing being transported so roughly? "Is this the reject from the northern breeding grounds?" one of the auction house workers asked, consulting a manifest. "Aye," the wagon master confirmed. "Deformed specimen. They tried to sell it to private collectors, but no one wanted it. Auction house agreed to take it, but I doubt it will fetch much. Look at it." The workers pried open the crate enough for Kai to glimpse inside. What he saw made his heart clench. The Chimera was small, perhaps only 3 feet tall at the shoulder, clearly young and underdeveloped. Its body was a chaotic mix of features. The body of a lion, the head of a goat, and a serpent for a tail, as traditional chimeras were. But this one was malformed. One of its lion legs was withered and weak. Its goat horns were asymmetrical, one barely a nub. The serpent tail was missing its venomous fangs. Its coat was patchy and dull, its eyes clouded with pain and fear. It was, by any objective standard, a failed creation. Worthless, unsellable to anyone who wanted a chimera for its traditional purposes. guarding, hunting, or status symbol, but Kai saw something else. He saw intelligence in those clouded eyes. He saw the way the creature tried to protect its weak leg, positioning itself carefully despite its obvious pain. He saw fear, yes, but also defiance, a refusal to give up even when everything about its situation screamed hopelessness. He saw himself. "What will happen to it if no one buys it?" Kai asked one of the workers. The man looked at him with barely concealed disdain, noting his simple clothes and omega scent. "It will be destroyed after the auction, if there are no bids. Auction house policy. Can't have defective magical creatures running around. Bad for business." "When is the auction?" "This afternoon. But you needn't concern yourself, Omega. The starting bid is 100 gold coins. Even for a defective chimera, the auction house has standards. 100 gold coins. Kai had perhaps 30 gold coins to his name, his entire savings built over years of careful trading. Even if he liquidated his entire inventory and sold his shop, he might reach 50 gold coins. The chimera was beyond his reach. He should walk away, should forget what he had seen, should focus on his own survival rather than worrying about a doomed magical creature. But he couldn't. That instinct that had kept him alive all these years was screaming at him that this mattered, that this chimera was important, that walking away would be a mistake he would regret for the rest of his life. Kai spent the morning in frantic activity. He went to every contact he had, every merchant who owed him a favor or might be interested in his goods. He sold his entire inventory at a loss, liquidated everything of value he owned, even sold the rights to his shop lease to another trader. By early afternoon, he had scraped together 42 gold coins and a small pouch of rare crystals he had been saving for years, hoping to one day afford a proper enchantment for his shop. The crystals were worth perhaps 10 gold coins to the right buyer. Combined with his cash, he had about 52 gold coins worth of assets, still not enough for the starting bid. But he went to the auction house anyway. The main auction hall was as grand as its reputation suggested. Soaring ceilings, gilded decorations, plush seating arranged in tiers that clearly indicated social standing. Alphas sat in the best seats. Betas occupied the middle sections. Omegas, the few who were present, huddled in the back corners, there to serve their alpha companions rather than bid themselves. Kai took a seat in the Omega section and waited. He watched as items were auctioned off to enthusiastic bidding. A pair of trained griffins went for 15,000 gold coins, an enchanted sword for 8,000, a rare healing artifact for 12,000. The amounts being thrown around casually were more than Kai would earn in a lifetime. Finally, near the end of the auction, the auctioneer called out, "Lot 47. Chimera, juvenile, male, from the northern breeding grounds. I must inform potential bidders that this specimen has several physical defects and is sold as is with no guarantees. Starting bid is 100 gold coins." The chimera was led onto the stage in chains, limping badly on its weak leg, its head lowered in exhaustion or defeat. Up close and under the bright lights, it looked even worse than it had in the crate. Patches of its fur were missing, revealing scarred skin beneath. Its goathead's eyes were dull, resigned. The serpent tail hung limp, barely moving. The audience murmured, none of it positive. Kai heard the comments around him. Pathetic specimen. Waste of space bringing that thing here. Who would bid even a single coin on that defect? The auctioneer waited. No hands went up. He tried again, lowering his voice to a more perfunctory tone. 100 gold coins for the Chimera. Do I have any bids? Silence. The auctioneer sighed. Going once, going twice. Wait. Kai's voice rang out, surprising everyone, including himself. He stood up, drawing every eye in the auction house. An Omega standing up to bid. It was unusual enough to cause a stir. The auctioneer looked skeptical. "Sir, the starting bid is 100 gold coins. Do you have that amount?" "I do not," Kai admitted, his voice shaking slightly but clear. "I have 42 gold coins and this." He held up the pouch of crystals. "These are Luminara crystals, rare and valuable, worth at least 10 gold coins to the right buyer, possibly more. I offer 52 gold coins worth of value for the Chimera." Laughter rippled through the audience. An alpha in the front row called out mockingly, "The starting bid is 100. You cannot bid half that amount, Omega. Learn the rules before you embarrass yourself further." The auctioneer raised his hand for silence, but his expression suggested he agreed with the sentiment. "I am sorry, sir, but bids below the minimum are not accepted. Unless you can meet the starting bid, I would like to invoke merchant's right," Kai said, his heart pounding. He was gambling everything on a rule that was technically legal, but almost never used. "As the only bidder present showing interest in this lot, I have the right to make a final offer if no one else bids. My offer is all my worldly wealth, 42 gold coins, and these Luminara crystals. If no one else will bid, then by merchant's right you must consider my offer or destroy the lot unsold." The auctioneer's eyes widened. Merchant's right was indeed a legitimate rule, dating back centuries to when the auction house was first established. It was designed to prevent waste by allowing any bid to be considered on items that had no other interest, but it was rarely invoked and never by an Omega. "That rule is meant for legitimate merchants," the alpha from the front row protested, "not for Omega shopkeepers playing at trading." "The rule does not specify who may invoke it," the auctioneer said slowly, consulting a rulebook his assistant had quickly produced. "Only that a registered merchant may do so. Is this Omega registered with the Merchants Guild?" Kai produced his guild card, which he had maintained even when he could barely afford the annual dues. The auctioneer examined it and nodded reluctantly. "He is registered. The invocation is legal." The alpha stood up angrily. "This is absurd. The Chimera is worth more than 50 gold coins, even as defective as it is. The breeding grounds would not have sent it if—" "Then bid," Kai said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "If you believe it is worth more, bid 100 gold coins, and it is yours. Otherwise, I invoke my right as the only interested party." The alpha's face turned red, but he did not bid. No one did. The Chimera was considered worthless by everyone present. They just could not stand the idea of an Omega getting anything from the auction house, even garbage. The auctioneer looked uncomfortable. "Very well. By merchant's right, in the absence of any other bids, I am obligated to consider your offer. 42 gold coins and—" He examined the crystals. "Luminara crystals in good condition. The house accepts. The Chimera is yours." Shocked silence filled the auction hall, followed by a wave of derisive laughter and mocking comments. Kai ignored them all. He walked to the front, paid his 42 gold coins, and handed over his crystals, his entire life savings and the last valuable things he owned, and accepted the chain leash attached to the Chimera. Up close, the creature looked even worse. It was trembling. Whether from fear or exhaustion, Kai could not tell. Its breathing was labored. It could barely stand. "Come," Kai said softly, giving the chain the gentlest pull. "Let us go home." The Chimera looked at him with those clouded eyes, and Kai saw surprise there. Perhaps it had expected another rejection, another prison, another owner who would see it only as a disappointment. They walked out of the grand auction house together, Kai painfully aware of the mocking laughter following them. The comments about the foolish Omega who had wasted everything on a worthless defect. He had no shop anymore, no inventory, no savings, just a magical creature that was dying and an uncertain future. But his instinct still insisted he had made the right choice. Kai's former shop was already being claimed by the new tenant, so he took the Chimera to the only place he had left. A small storage room he had rented in the warehouse district to keep overflow inventory. It was barely 10 feet square, with a single window and no amenities, but it was shelter. He helped the Chimera inside and removed the heavy chains, which had clearly been chafing the creature's neck and legs. The Chimera collapsed immediately, too exhausted to stand anymore. "I am sorry," Kai said quietly, as he examined the creature's injuries. "I know this is not much, but it is what I have, and I promise I will take care of you as best I can." The Chimera's 3 heads, lion, goat, and serpent, all turned to look at him. For a long moment, they just stared. Then the lion head spoke, its voice rough and unused. "Why?" Kai jerked back in surprise. "You can speak." "All chimeras can speak," the goat head said, its voice higher but equally rough. "We simply choose not to waste words on those who see us as objects rather than beings." "But you spoke to me," Kai said, "because you asked a question we do not understand." The serpent tail hissed, its voice sibilant even without fangs. "Why did you waste everything on us? We are defective, worthless, dying. You could have kept your coins and crystals, kept your security. Why sacrifice it for a creature you do not know?" Kai sat down on the floor beside the Chimera. "Because when I looked at you, I saw myself. Someone the world has deemed worthless. Someone struggling to survive, despite being told they have no value. Someone who refuses to give up even when everything seems hopeless. I could not walk away from that, from you." The 3 heads exchanged glances in a way that suggested silent communication. Finally, the lion head spoke again. "What is your name, Omega, who sees value where others see nothing?" "Kai Silverstream. And you?" "We have no name," the goat head said. "The breeding grounds called us Failure Batch 17. They did not believe we deserved names." "More than I will name you," Kai said, "if you permit me." "You own us," the serpent hissed. "You can do as you wish." "I do not want to own you," Kai corrected gently. "I want to help you. There is a difference. A name is a gift, not a claim. I will only give it if you wish to receive it." More of that silent communication between the heads. Then, simultaneously, all 3 spoke. "We accept your gift. Name us." Kai thought for a moment. "Triad, because you are 3 beings in one, and 3 is stronger than 1 alone. Is that acceptable?" "Triad," the lion head repeated, testing it. "Yes, we are Triad." Over the next weeks, Kai discovered the full extent of Triad's condition. The Chimera was indeed dying, slowly poisoned by the unstable magic that had been used to create it. The breeding grounds had tried to force 3 animals together using flawed spells, and the result was a creature in constant pain whose body was rejecting itself. Without treatment, Triad would be dead within a month, but Kai had one advantage. Years of trading in healing herbs and potions had given him knowledge that most people lacked. He might not be wealthy or powerful, but he understood remedies, and he had contacts among healers who owed him favors. He visited every healer he knew, describing Triad's condition, asking for advice. Most told him it was hopeless, that magical poisoning of this severity was beyond healing. But an elderly healer named Mira, who had always been kind to Kai, offered a different perspective. "The magic that created this chimera was forced," she explained as she examined Triad, running her hands over the creature's malformed body. "The 3 essences, lion, goat, serpent, were not allowed to merge naturally. They were chained together by crude spells. That is why the body rejects itself." "Can it be fixed?" Kai asked desperately. "Perhaps," Mira said slowly, "if the binding spells were redone properly, if the 3 essences were allowed to merge willingly rather than by force. But that would require powerful magic and rare ingredients. And even then there is no guarantee of success." "What would it cost?" Kai asked. Mira gave him a sympathetic look. More than you have. Child, the ingredients alone would cost several hundred gold coins, and the mage capable of performing such work would charge at least 1,000 more. Kai's heart sank. He had nothing left. He had sacrificed everything just to buy Triad. But then his trader's instinct kicked in. He might not have money, but he had knowledge. He had contacts. He had a lifetime of building relationships with people across the merchant quarter. Perhaps he could find another way. What ingredients are needed? Kai asked. Specifically. Mira listed them: moonflower petals, dragon's breath moss, essence of unity crystals, starfall water, and 3 sympathetic animal tokens, items that carried the pure essence of lion, goat, and serpent. Kai memorized the list and spent the next week in frantic activity. He could not afford to buy any of these items outright, but he could trade favors. He went to every contact he had built over a decade of trading. The herbalist who he had helped set up shop 5 years ago. She had moonflower petals and gave them to Kai in gratitude for past kindness. The adventurer who he had provided supplies to at a discount when times were hard. He had collected dragon's breath moss on his travels and was willing to trade it for a promise of future free potions. Potions Kai would have to make somehow. The elderly widow who he had helped with her husband's funeral arrangements, she had an essence of unity crystal that had been her wedding gift, and she gave it to Kai, saying, "Use it to create unity. That is what it was meant for." Slowly, piece by piece, Kai gathered the ingredients through favors, promises, and the goodwill he had built over years of being honest and kind, even when it did not benefit him. The last item, starfall water, was the hardest. It only appeared during meteor showers and had to be collected at the exact moment the meteors fell. Kai waited for 3 nights at the designated collection point with empty vials, watching the sky. On the 3rd night, a small meteor shower occurred, and he managed to collect half a vial of the precious liquid. Barely enough, but it would have to do. The animal tokens proved even more challenging. He needed items that carried the pure essence of lion, goat, and serpent. Not just any items, but ones freely given by the animals themselves. For the lion token, Kai traveled to the city menagerie and spoke to the keeper, explaining his situation. The keeper, moved by his dedication, allowed Kai to approach an old lioness who was near death. Kai sat with her for hours, speaking softly, and when she died peacefully in her sleep, she left behind a single whisker. The keeper gave it to Kai. She gave it freely, by dying in peace rather than fear. That counts. The goat token came from a farmer whose goat had been sick. Kai had traded healing herbs to save the animal months ago. When Kai explained what he needed, the farmer brought him a shed horn. She dropped this just yesterday. Seemed like fate. The serpent token was the most difficult. Snakes did not shed items freely, and approaching them was dangerous. Kai spent days searching before he found a snake den in the forest. He left offerings of food and sat quietly nearby, not threatening, just present. Finally, a large serpent emerged and slithered past him, leaving behind a shed skin. Kai took only a small piece, whispering thanks. With all ingredients gathered, Kai returned to healer Mira. She looked at him with amazement. "You actually found everything. I did not think it possible." "Triad is dying," Kai said simply. "I will do whatever it takes." "You have the ingredients, but you still need a mage powerful enough to perform the ritual," Mira reminded him. "That will cost—" "I will do it," a voice said from the doorway. They turned to see a woman Kai did not recognize. She was middle-aged, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that glowed with barely contained magical power. Everything about her screamed wealth and status. "Who are you?" Mira asked, bowing respectfully, clearly recognizing the woman as someone important. "I am Archmage Elora," the woman said. And I have been watching young Kai's efforts with great interest, an Omega trader who sacrifices everything for a dying Chimera, who gathers rare ingredients through nothing but favors and kindness, who refuses to give up despite impossible odds. That is someone worth helping. She approached Triad, who had been lying quietly in the corner, too weak to do more than watch. I will perform the ritual free of charge. Consider it payment for reminding me why I became a mage in the first place, to help those who cannot help themselves. The ritual took place that night under the full moon. Archmage Elora created a complex magical circle, positioned Triad at its center, and used the ingredients Kai had gathered to fuel a spell more powerful than anything Kai had ever witnessed. Light erupted from the circle, engulfing Triad completely. The Chimera cried out, 3 voices blending into one, as the forced bindings that had been slowly killing it were dissolved and replaced with something new. The 3 essences, lion, goat, serpent, were given a choice for the first time since their creation. Remain separate or merge willingly. They chose to merge. When the light faded, Triad still existed but was transformed. The malformed leg was whole and strong. The asymmetrical horns were now balanced and proud. The serpent tail had regrown its fangs, but more than that, the whole creature radiated health and power. Its coat gleamed, its eyes were clear, and most importantly, the 3 heads no longer looked like they were fighting against each other, but working in harmony. "How do you feel?" Kai asked anxiously. Triad stood, smoothly, without pain or struggle, and looked at itself in wonder. "Whole," all 3 heads said in unison. "For the first time since we existed, we feel whole." The Chimera turned to Kai, and there were tears in its eyes. "You saved us, not just our life, but our existence. We were forced together, a crude creation meant only to serve. Now we are unified, a true being rather than 3 prisoners in one body. How can we ever repay such a gift?" "You do not owe me anything," Kai said, his own eyes wet. "I did what anyone should do when they see someone suffering." "But most do not," Triad said. "Most see suffering and look away. You saw suffering and sacrificed everything to help. That makes you extraordinary." Archmage Elora watched this exchange with a soft smile. "Kai Silverstream, you have demonstrated qualities that most people spend lifetimes failing to achieve. Compassion, perseverance, the ability to see value where others see nothing. These are the marks of a true hero." "I am no hero," Kai protested. "I am just an Omega trader who transformed a dying Chimera into a healthy, powerful being through nothing but determination and kindness," Elora interrupted. "Do not diminish what you have accomplished. Now, I suspect Triad would like to speak with you privately. I will take my leave." The Archmage departed, and Kai found himself alone with Triad in the small storage room that had been their home for weeks. "Kai," the Lionhead said seriously, "we wish to offer you something." "Chimeras can form bonds with those we deem worthy," the Goathead continued. "A bond that grants power, protection, and partnership," the Serpent finished. "We are offering this bond to you," all 3 heads said together. "Not because you own us, but because we choose you. Because you have proven yourself worthy in ways we never expected to see. Will you accept?" Kai's breath caught. A Chimera bond was legendary, granting the bonded human access to the Chimera's strength, its magical abilities, its longevity. Bonded pairs were rare and inevitably became famous, sought after, powerful. "I do not want power for its own sake," Kai said slowly. "But if bonding with you would allow me to help more people, to do more good, then yes, I accept, gratefully and humbly." Triad stepped forward, and all 3 heads touched Kai's forehead simultaneously. Power flowed between them, not claiming or possessing, but sharing and unifying. Kai felt Triad's essence merge with his own. The lion's strength and courage, the goat's wisdom and adaptability, the serpent's cunning and perception. And Triad felt Kai's compassion, his integrity, his unshakable belief in helping others even at cost to himself. When the bonding completed, Kai stood transformed. He did not look different physically, but power radiated from him now. His omega scent, which had always been weak and easily dismissed, now carried undertones of wild magic that demanded respect. His eyes glowed faintly with tricolor light, gold for lion, silver for goat, green for serpent. "We are bonded now," Triad said with satisfaction. "Partners, equals, family." "Family," Kai repeated, testing the word. He had been alone for so long. "I like that." Word of Kai's transformation spread quickly through the merchant quarter and beyond. The Omega trader who had bought a worthless Chimera had somehow not only saved it, but had bonded with it. The news reached the grand auction house, where it caused considerable consternation among those who had mocked Kai's purchase. But the real impact came when people realized what Kai's bond with Triad meant in practical terms. Chimeras possessed incredible abilities: enhanced strength, the power to sense lies, magical detection capabilities, flight, elemental breath weapons. A bonded Chimera could share all of these with its partner. Kai, previously a struggling Omega trader with no particular skills, was now one of the most powerful beings in the city. People who had dismissed him suddenly wanted his services. Merchants sought his partnership. Nobles requested audiences. The same Alpha who had mocked him at the auction sent a formal apology and offered a lucrative contract. Kai refused them all. "I did not do this for power or profit," he told Triad as they discussed the flood of offers. "I did this because it was right, because you deserved help. These people only care about me now because I can benefit them. That is not partnership, that is exploitation." "Then what will we do?" Triad asked. "We cannot live in this storage room forever." Kai smiled. "We will start a new business, not trading common goods, but helping others the way people helped me gather your ingredients. We will use our combined abilities to solve problems, to help those who cannot help themselves, to prove that value is not measured in gold, but in the good we do." They established the Silverstream Solutions Company, offering their services to anyone who needed help, regardless of ability to pay. Rich merchants could afford their standard rates and did pay handsomely for Triad's ability to detect fraud in contracts or identify cursed items. But poor families received the same quality of service for whatever they could afford, even if that was nothing. Kai's instinct for recognizing value served him well. He could identify problems others missed, could see solutions where others saw only impossibility. Combined with Triad's magical abilities and combat prowess, they became legendary problem solvers. They found a merchant's lost daughter, kidnapped by bandits. They exposed a corrupt official who had been embezzling from the city's poorhouses. They stopped a plague before it could spread by identifying its magical source. They negotiated peace between feuding noble houses. They rescued endangered magical creatures from illegal traders. Each success built their reputation. Within a year, Silverstream Solutions was one of the most respected organizations in Mercantia. Within 3 years, their fame had spread across all 5 kingdoms. Kai, the Omega trader who everyone had dismissed, had become a legend. But he never forgot where he came from. He continued to live modestly, refusing offers of noble titles or estates. He reinvested most of his earnings into helping others, funding orphanages, supporting struggling merchants, providing healing to those who could not afford it. And always, he remembered that single moment in the grand auction house when everyone had laughed at him for offering 1 crystal and 42 gold coins for a worthless Chimera. 5 years after buying Triad, Kai was invited back to the Grand Auction House to give a speech at their annual gala. He accepted, curious to see how the place had changed, or if it had changed at all. The auction hall was as grand as he remembered, filled with wealthy alphas, successful merchants, and social climbers, all trying to see and be seen. When Kai was introduced, a hush fell over the crowd. The legendary Kai Silverstream, bonded to the most famous Chimera in the 5 kingdoms, was standing before them. He was no longer the desperate Omega in worn clothes. He wore fine garments now, tailored and elegant, though still modest by the standards of those present. Triad stood beside him, magnificent and powerful, its 3 heads held high with pride. Kai looked out at the audience and saw many familiar faces. The Alpha who had mocked him, the auctioneer who had reluctantly accepted his bid, merchants who had refused to help him when he was struggling, all of them watching him now with expressions ranging from respect to envy to regret. 5 years ago, Kai began, his voice clear and strong, I stood in this very hall as an Omega trader with nothing to my name but 42 gold coins and a pouch of Luminara crystals. I bid on a Chimera that everyone deemed worthless, and I was mocked for it. I was told I was a fool, that I had wasted everything on garbage, that I would regret my choice. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Several people in the audience shifted uncomfortably, remembering their participation in that mockery. I want to thank everyone who laughed that day, Kai continued, because your laughter taught me something valuable, that worth is not determined by popular opinion. That value is not measured by what others are willing to pay, that sometimes the most precious things are the ones everyone else overlooks. He gestured to Triad, who rumbled softly, a sound that vibrated through the hall. Triad was deemed worthless because of physical defects. I was deemed worthless because of my designation. Together, we have proven that worth is not about perfection or status or meeting society's expectations. It is about what you do with what you are given. It is about choosing compassion over profit. It is about seeing value where others see nothing. Kai looked directly at the Alpha who had mocked him 5 years ago. The man could not meet his gaze. I stand here today not to gloat or to seek revenge, Kai said, but to offer a challenge. The next time you see something or someone dismissed as worthless, look closer. Ask yourself if perhaps the problem is not with what you are looking at, but with how you are looking at it. Because the world is full of triads, beings of value that are overlooked because they do not fit conventional expectations. And the world is full of opportunities for those brave enough to see potential where others see only flaws. He concluded his speech to thunderous applause, though he suspected much of it was performative rather than genuine. But that was all right. He had not come here to change minds, but to plant seeds. Some might take root, most would not. That was the nature of growth. After the speech, as Kai was preparing to leave, the auctioneer from 5 years ago approached him. The man looked older, worn down by years of facilitating the greed of the wealthy. Master Silverstream, the auctioneer said formally, I wanted to apologize for how I treated you that day. I should have seen what you saw, should have recognized the value in both you and the Chimera. You saw what you were trained to see, Kai said without anger. You were doing your job according to the rules you were given. I do not hold that against you. Still, the auctioneer said, I have thought about that day often over the years. About how close I came to refusing your bid entirely, about how the merchant's right rule is meant for exactly such situations, to prevent waste, to give value a chance even when conventional thinking says there is none. I should have embraced that spirit rather than resisting it. He paused, then continued more quietly. I have started looking for more situations where merchant's right might apply. Items that receive no conventional bids but might still have value to someone. I have found several over the years, and I have made sure they go to people who see their potential rather than their flaws. It is a small thing, but it is my attempt to honor what you taught me that day." Kai smiled, genuine warmth in his expression. "That is not a small thing. That is everything. Thank you for learning the lesson. Thank you for passing it forward." They shook hands, and Kai left the grand auction house for the second time in his life. The first time, he had left with nothing but a dying Chimera and mocking laughter following him. This time, he left as a legend, with Triad healthy and powerful at his side, and the knowledge that maybe, just maybe, he had helped shift how people thought about value. Years continued to pass. Decades. Kai's legend grew, with each problem solved, each life saved, each moment of compassion shown. Stories were told about him across all 5 kingdoms. The Omega who saw value, the merchant who traded everything for kindness, the man who proved that worth cannot be measured in gold. New traders entering the profession were told his story as a lesson. That success is not always about profit. That the most valuable trades are sometimes the ones that cost everything. That reputation is built not on wealth, but on integrity. The grand auction house eventually erected a small plaque near the spot where Kai had made his historic bid. It read, "Here stood Kai Silverstream, who offered 42 gold coins and a pouch of crystals for a creature everyone deemed worthless. He taught us that true value is not in what we see, but in what we choose to see. May all who pass remember the worthless often holds worth beyond measure." Kai visited the plaque once, 20 years after his famous bid, and smiled at the irony. The grand auction house, bastion of material value and social hierarchy, had memorialized the moment when an Omega had defied everything they stood for. "They still don't understand," Triad observed, all 3 heads examining the plaque. "They made you a legend, but they treat it as an exception rather than a rule. They still value wealth over worth." "Change is slow," Kai said philosophically. "But it happens. Look around. Do you see any Omegas here today?" Triad looked and noticed that there were indeed several Omegas in the auction house, not hiding in corners but seated among the other bidders, participating openly. "Progress," the lion head acknowledged. "Small, but real," the goat head agreed. "Because you showed them it was possible," the serpent hissed with satisfaction. By the time Kai reached his 50th year, appearing still young due to the longevity granted by his bond with Triad, Silverstream Solutions had expanded far beyond anything he had imagined. He now employed dozens of people, many of them Omegas or others whom society had overlooked. He had established a training program teaching young merchants about ethical trading, value assessment, and the importance of compassion in business. He had also started the Silverstream Fund, which provided microloans to struggling merchants at no interest, funded entirely by the profits from his wealthier clients. Hundreds of small businesses had been saved or started through this program, creating a ripple effect of prosperity through the lower economic classes. One evening, as Kai reviewed applications for the fund in his office, no longer a storage room, but a proper building that served as headquarters for his growing organization, a young Omega woman was shown in by his assistant. She looked nervous, clutching a proposal document. Her clothes worn but clean, she reminded Kai achingly of himself at her age. "Master Silverstream," she said, bowing deeply. "Thank you for seeing me. I know you are very busy." "Never too busy to hear a good idea," Kai said warmly, gesturing for her to sit. "What brings you here?" "I want to start a business," she said, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "Training magical creatures humanely. The current breeding grounds use force and cruelty, creating unstable creatures like—" She paused, clearly worried she had said something offensive. "Like Triad was," Kai finished for her with a smile. "You are absolutely right. The breeding grounds methods are cruel and produce inferior results. Ethical training would be revolutionary. Tell me more. She outlined her plan, a facility where magical creatures were treated with respect, where their natural abilities were enhanced through partnership rather than domination, where creatures and trainers formed genuine bonds. It was ambitious, idealistic, and would require significant startup capital. "How much do you need?" Kai asked when she finished. 500 gold coins, she said, then quickly added, "I know that's a lot. I have a business plan, projections, letters of recommendation from healers who have worked with me. I can pay it back over 10 years, with interest." "No interest," Kai interrupted. "The Silver Stream Fund does not charge interest. We invest in people, not profit. And I will give you 800 gold coins, not 500. Her eyes widened. I don't understand. Why would you give me more than I asked for?" "Because I have learned that the difference between barely surviving and actually thriving is often just a bit more capital than you think you need," Kai explained. "The extra 300 will allow you to handle unexpected problems, to pay yourself a living wage while you build the business, to not have to choose between success and survival. Use it wisely." Tears streamed down her face. "I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much." "Say you will treat those creatures with the respect they deserve," Kai said. "Say you will prove that compassion is not weakness, but strength. Say you will remember this moment when you are successful and help someone else the way I am helping you now. That is all the payment I need." After she left, Triad emerged from the adjoining room where the Chimera often rested during Kai's business meetings. "You just funded your own potential competition," the Lionhead observed. "If her humane training methods work, they could replace the breeding grounds entirely. The breeding grounds are your biggest clients for problem solving. You just gave money to someone who might cost you significant business." "I know," Kai said. "And you don't care," the goat head said, not a question but an observation. "I care more about doing what is right than protecting my profit margins," Kai confirmed. "If her methods work, if they replace the cruel breeding grounds, that will be better for every magical creature in the 5 kingdoms. That matters more than any contract I might lose." "This is why we chose you," all 3 heads said in unison. "This is why we will always choose you." Kai's 50th birthday was celebrated across Mercantia with festivals and ceremonies. The king himself attended, granting Kai a title Duke of Mercantia, a position that came with land, wealth, and significant political power. Kai accepted graciously, but privately told Triad he would change nothing about how they lived or worked. "Titles are just words," he said. "They do not change who I am or what I value. I am still the Omega trader who offered everything for a dying Chimera. That will always be the most important thing about me." During the celebration, Kai was approached by an elderly alpha he did not immediately recognize. The man was richly dressed, clearly wealthy, but carried himself with humility that was unusual for his designation. "Master Silverstream, or should I say Duke Silverstream now," the alpha said. "You do not remember me, do you?" Kai studied him, then recognition dawned. "You were at the auction 25 years ago. You mocked me for bidding on Triad." "I did," the alpha admitted, shame clear in his voice. "I was young and arrogant and thought wealth and breeding were all that mattered. I said terrible things about you that day, things I deeply regret." "Why are you telling me this?" Kai asked, curious rather than angry. "Because I have spent the last 25 years watching you prove me wrong," the alpha said. "Watching you build an empire not on exploitation but on compassion. Watching you succeed by helping others rather than stepping on them. You have fundamentally changed how business is done in this city, in this kingdom. And I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" Kai repeated, surprised. "For what?" "For showing me a better way," the alpha said. "I have 3 children now. I'm raising them to value character over status, compassion over profit. I'm teaching them your story, not as a legend, but as a roadmap. How to see value where others see nothing. How to be brave enough to stand alone if that is what right requires. You gave me that. The least I can do is acknowledge it and express my gratitude. The Alpha extended his hand. Kai took it, and they shook. Not as superior and inferior, not as Alpha and Omega, but as equals, as two people who had both learned important lessons just on different timelines. Teach your children well, Kai said. The world needs more people who value compassion, who understand that true strength is not domination but kindness. I will, the Alpha promised. Because of you, I will. Watching this exchange, Triad rumbled with satisfaction. You changed him. One person at a time. You are changing the world. We are changing it, Kai corrected. This has never been just me. It has always been us, together. As Kai entered his 60s, then 70s, still appearing middle-aged due to the Chimera bond, he began thinking about legacy. He had built an organization that would continue after him. He had trained successors who shared his values. He had established systems and funds that would perpetuate his work. But he wanted to do something more. Something that would crystallize the lessons he had learned and spread them as far as possible. He wrote a book. It was not a memoir, though it contained his story. It was not a business manual, though it taught valuable lessons about trading and value assessment. It was not a philosophy text, though it explored deep questions about worth and human dignity. It was all of these things and none of them. He called it simply The Worth of the Worthless, and it became one of the most widely read books in the 5 kingdoms. In it, Kai explored the fundamental question that had driven his entire life: how do we determine value? He argued that society's methods, wealth, status, designation, physical perfection, were not just flawed, but actively harmful. That true value lay in character, in compassion, in the courage to be kind even when kindness cost you everything. He told stories, his own and others, of people and creatures deemed worthless who had proven to be invaluable. He challenged readers to examine their own prejudices, their own assumptions about who and what mattered. And he ended with the simple truth that had guided his life since that day in the grand auction house. Worth cannot be bought or sold. It can only be recognized by those wise enough to look beyond surface appearances and see the potential that dwells within all beings, waiting for someone brave enough to believe in it. The book sold hundreds of thousands of copies. It was translated into dozens of languages. It was taught in schools, discussed in philosophy circles, quoted by leaders. It became a touchstone for social reform movements across the 5 kingdoms. But Kai's favorite response came from a young Omega boy who sent him a handwritten letter. Dear Duke Silverstream, I read your book and I cried. I am 14 years old and everyone tells me I am worthless because I am Omega and small and not good at anything important. But your book says I have worth anyway. That I matter. I don't know if I believe it yet, but I want to believe it. Thank you for saying it. Thank you for making me think maybe I can be more than what everyone says I am. From a boy who hopes. Kai kept that letter on his desk for the rest of his life. It reminded him why he had written the book, why he had built his organization, why he had offered everything for a dying Chimera all those years ago. Because every being deserved to know they had worth. Every person deserved someone to believe in them. Every creature deemed worthless deserved a chance to prove otherwise. And sometimes, one person believing, one act of compassion, one refusal to accept society's verdict of worthlessness, sometimes that was enough to change everything. On Kai's 100th birthday, though he appeared to be in his 50s due to the bond, he and Triad traveled back to the storage room where they had first lived together. It had been preserved as a historical site, maintained by the Silverstream Foundation as a reminder of humble beginnings. They stood together in the small space, remembering those desperate early days when they had nothing but each other and a determination not to give up. "Do you ever regret it?" Kai asked Triad. "Bonding with me? You could have chosen someone powerful, someone who could have given you an easier life." "You gave us something more valuable than ease," Triad replied. "You gave us choice. You gave us dignity. You gave us a life of meaning. Why would we regret that?" "Because it was hard," Kai said. "Those first years especially. We struggled. We starved sometimes. We faced rejection and mockery. And we survived it together," Triad said. "And we built something beautiful from that struggle. Would you trade those hard years for an easier path?" Kai thought about it, then shook his head. "No. Those years taught us who we were, what we valued, what we were willing to fight for. An easier path would not have given us that." "Exactly," Triad said. "We do not regret the hardship because it led us here, to this life, to this impact, to meaning and purpose and family. You are our family, Kai. You have always been our family. From the moment you offered everything you had for us, we were yours and you were ours." "Family," Kai repeated, as he had so many years ago, and the word still felt as warm and true as it had that first time. They left the storage room and walked through Mercantia together, through streets that had changed dramatically since Kai's youth. The city was more prosperous now, but more importantly, it was more just. Omegas held positions of power and respect. Magical creatures were treated more humanely. The rigid hierarchies that had once seemed unshakable had softened, becoming more flexible, more fair. Not everywhere, not completely, but enough to matter, enough to know that change was possible, that one person could make a difference, that worth was not determined by designation or birth or social standing, but by character and courage, and the willingness to see value where others saw nothing. Kai's story became the kind of legend that parents told their children. The Omega trader who saw worth. The man who bought a dying Chimera and became a duke. The legend who proved that compassion was stronger than gold. But Kai himself never thought of his life as legendary. He thought of it as a series of choices, some small, some large, all guided by a simple principle. Treat every being with the dignity they deserve, regardless of what society says they are worth. And it had started with a single crystal and 42 gold coins offered for a creature everyone called worthless. Sometimes, the most valuable investments are the ones everyone else refuses to make. Sometimes the greatest treasures are found in the things others discard. Sometimes worth is not measured in what you have, but in what you are willing to sacrifice for something or someone you believe deserves better. Kai had learned that lesson at the Grand Auction House 25 years ago, and he had spent the rest of his long life teaching it to anyone willing to listen, and the world was better for it. The end. If Kai and Triad's story moved your soul, if you felt the power of recognizing worth where others see nothing, if you believe that compassion can change the world, then please help us reach our goal right now. We're in the final 15 days to hit 1,000 subscribers, and we're so close we can almost touch it. Your subscription is what unlocks the financial support that keeps this channel alive and allows us to continue creating these life-changing stories. Hit that subscribe button immediately. Share this video with every single person you know who loves epic fantasy, underdog stories, and tales of transformation. Comment below and tell us what moment touched you most. When Kai first bought Triad, when he gathered the ingredients through pure determination, when they bonded, when Kai's compassion changed an entire society. Your engagement pushes this video to more people who desperately need to hear that they have worth, that their compassion matters, that one person can make a difference.